The first time her own mother came at her, she thought it was a game. It was not. It was late August, and the young squirrel with the small torn notch in her left ear did not yet understand that the warm world she had been born into was about to end. Not slowly, not gently, but in a single afternoon at her mother's teeth. She ran. Across the fence line, past the oak she had been born in, into a yard she had never entered before. She did not know it yet, but she had 90 days. 90 days to learn everything, or she would not see the spring. This is A Squirrel's Life, where we follow one squirrel, one real season, one small story that is almost certainly happening in your own yard right now. If that's the kind of quiet you like, stay a moment and subscribe. A new story comes every few days. Because what happened to this one squirrel over the next 3 months is something almost no one ever watches all the way through. Most people see a squirrel in the yard and think, cute, busy, a little frantic. They never learn that the frantic thing on the fence is running a countdown, that she is being tested, that the ending of her story changed the way I look at my own backyard, and by the last minute, it may change yours. I started calling her Notch for the tear in her ear. Here is her first winter. For the first weeks, Notch did what all young squirrels do. She stayed close to the world she knew. She had been born high in an old eastern oak, in a nest of leaves her mother had built against the trunk, a dray woven tight enough to hold heat through a summer storm. And her mother had been everything: milk, warmth, the low chuckling sound a mother makes that means safe. Notch had a sister and a brother in that nest, and for a while the three of them were a single, warm knot of fur and sleep. But here is the thing about squirrels that almost no one is told. A mother squirrel does not raise her young toward love. She raises them toward leaving. Researchers who study squirrel behavior have a name for what happened on that August afternoon: natal dispersal. When the young are grown enough to survive alone, the mother turns. She chases, she bites, not because something went wrong, but because everything went right. Pushing them out is how she keeps them from starving in a territory too small to feed them all, from breeding with their own siblings, from crowding the very ground that fed them. The chase you might see in late summer, the one you smile at and call playing, sometimes it is a mother saying goodbye in the only language she has. So Notch was alone in a strange yard, and the yard did not care. She had to learn it fast. Where the tall oak stood, where the wooden fence ran, where a low brick wall held the last of the day's warmth, somewhere in that yard was a wooden feeder on a pole. And though Notch did not know it yet, that feeder, and the quiet person who filled it, would decide whether she lived. What people never realize is how much a squirrel is actually doing when she seems to be only darting around. She was building a map, not a picture, a memory. Squirrels hold the layout of their whole range in spatial memory so precise that scientists at Berkeley have watched them organize their food by type, like a mind sorting a pantry into shelves. Within days, Notch knew that yard better than you know the inside of your own house. Then the food changed. In the warm months, there had always been more: soft green shoots, spilled seed, the easy abundance of a fed summer. But by late September, the air had an edge to it in the mornings, and the trees began to let go. Acorns fell, and with them came the only work that mattered now. A gray squirrel does not hibernate. She has no long winter sleep to hide inside. Instead, she must take autumn, a few short weeks of falling nuts, and bury it. Bury the entire winter, one nut at a time, all across the yard. Thousands of small holes, thousands of tiny decisions. This is scatter hoarding, and it is one of the most astonishing memory feats in any backyard animal. Notch would take an acorn, carry it, dig, press it into the earth, cover it, and remember. Not all of them, No squirrel finds every cache. The ones she would forget were not failures. They were oak trees she was planting without knowing it, a forest she would never see. But the ones she remembered were her only chance at March. And then Notch learned that in her new yard, she was being watched. There was an older squirrel there, bigger, established, the kind that had survived a winter already and did not intend to share. It began to follow her, not close, just close enough, waiting for her to bury something so it could dig it back up the moment she left. What Notch did next is a real, documented behavior, and it is one of the cleverest things a small animal does. When she felt those eyes on her, she stopped burying food for real. She faked it. She would dig a hole, make a show of pushing something in, cover it carefully, with empty paws. Deceptive caching, researchers call it, a lie told with the whole body, staged for a thief, while the real acorn stayed tucked in her mouth for a hiding place she'd visit alone. The young one who had been chased out of her home was learning to survive by outthinking something stronger than her. But that night, something went wrong. A cold front came down harder than the season should have allowed, and in the gray of the next morning, Notch was thinner than she had ever been, and the sky held something worse than cold. A shadow crossed the yard, a hawk riding low over the fences. Squirrels have a language for exactly this. Not one alarm, but many. A sharp cook, cook, cook for a threat on the ground, a long-drawn quah for a danger in the air. The whole body turned into a signal, the tail flagging in hard flicks that tell every other animal where and how bad. Notch froze flat against the bark, silent, one heartbeat from being lifted out of her own story. The shadow passed. But the winter was only beginning. The real test was not the hawk. It was the long, quiet middle of winter, the weeks when nothing falls, nothing grows, and a squirrel lives only on what her autumn self remembered to bury. This is where most first-year squirrels are lost, not to a dramatic predator, but to a slow arithmetic. Too few caches found, too little fat, too many freezing nights burning through a body too small. The truth researchers give us is a hard one. Most squirrels do not survive their first year. Notch was, statistically, already a ghost. The coldest week came in January. Snow sealed the ground. The clever tricks, the false burials, the map, the memory, all of it now came down to whether the holes she remembered still held anything at all. And one gray afternoon, at the base of the fence, Notch dug where her memory told her to dig, and found nothing. The thief had been there first. She dug again. Nothing. A third time. Nothing. I watched her sit in the snow, too thin, too still, and I thought I was watching the end of her. And then she did the last thing left to a squirrel who has run out of her own stores. She went to the feeder. Not because she trusted it, because she had no choice. The wooden feeder on the pole, the one filled by a quiet person she had spent all autumn avoiding. That was the only reason a torn-eared squirrel with no mother and an empty map was still breathing in January. She survived the winter on it, one reluctant handful of seed at a time, from the one part of that yard she had been too cautious to use, until being cautious would have killed her. By late February, the mornings softened, the ground gave, and in the thaw, something small and green pushed up along the fence line. An oak seedling, from an acorn Notch had buried in October and never come back for. The forgotten one, the mistake that was really a gift. Notch made it to spring, most don't. And the strangest part, the part I keep coming back to, is that almost none of it was visible. The chase that looked like play was a goodbye. The frantic digging was a memory being written. The little theatrical burials were a lie told to survive. The one nut she failed to find became a tree. There is a squirrel in your yard right now, living a story exactly this large. A first winter, a lost mother, a map only she can read, and you will only ever see a few seconds of it. Most people watch a squirrel their whole lives and never know they're watching someone in the middle of the hardest year of her life. You know now. And the next time you see a thin squirrel go quiet at your feet or in the cold, you'll know exactly what it means. So tell me, has the same squirrel come back to your yard season after season? I read every single comment and I'd love to know her story. I'll see you in the next one.